Live on YouTube and on Zoom. So we shall begin. So, you know, if you had $10,000 or I don't know, you had a nice chunk of money, would you spend it on a new car or a new gadget for your family, or would you take your family on a trip? And it's a common dilemma that many people have. It's a very fortunate dilemma, I should say. Many people are not fortunate enough to even have that dilemma. But experts advise that it would be better to invest it in a family trip rather than buying new furniture for the home or anything like that. Why is that? Because while a purchase certainly gives you initial excitement, the novelty, but that thrill fades off after a short amount of time and it becomes rote, routine, old, uninteresting. By contrast, when you have an experience of a nice trip and quality time you spent together, that memory stays within the family, within all those who experienced that trip for a lifetime. And it's always fun to revisit the photos. You print a photo book, or even if it's just on your camera roll or whatever, you get to re-experience that trip. Just yesterday, Google Photos sends me like little reminders, like, "Oh, this happened 10 years ago. This happened 11 years ago." So just yesterday, it showed me the photos of trip to Jerusalem 11 years ago, and that's when my wife and I visited Israel. Um, and it's exciting, and it makes me feel like whatever I spent on that trip, even till today, I get to live with that, and it's exciting. So in this lesson, we're going to learn how to transform our routine of Jewish life into something that's new and exciting. All right, are you excited? All right. So why was the month of Kislev offended? So this week, today is the 28th day of the month of Cheshvan. Um, and the and tomorrow night is the beginning of the month of Kislev. Now, what holiday is in Kislev?
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah, exactly. Now, what happened? What day of Kislev is Hanukkah on?
Yeah.
25th. Okay, very good. You did your homework. So, um, now here's a little deeper trivia, and that is what happened on the 25th of Kislev many hundreds of years before Hanukkah? Stumped. All right, source one will have the answer. Rabbi Hanina said, on the 25th day of Kislev, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was completed, and it remained folded up. I guess it completed as in they had all the materials ready, because it's a temporary structure anyway. So completed doesn't mean that it was built. It just means everything, all the utensils were built, and all the beams were cut out to size, and it remained folded up until the first of Nisan. As the verse states, on the first of the month you shall erect the Mishkan. The Jews complained to Moses about the fact that it had not been erected immediately, saying, has something happened to it? Right? So let's, before we continue, let's backtrack for a second. The Jews left Egypt in the month of Nisan. They left Egypt on the 15th day of Nisan. That's when Passover is. So let's call that the first month number one. They got the Torah on this sixth day of Sivan. Let's call that month number three. Okay? Moses goes up to the mountain and comes down on the 17th day of Tammuz, shatters the tablets. That's month number four. He goes up for another 40 days till the end of month number five, and then he goes up for another 40 days and comes down on the mountain. So that means the third set of 40 days is the entire sixth month and the first 10 days of the seventh month, which is Yom Kippur. Okay? So month number 7 from the Exodus is when he comes down from the mountain. God says, I have forgiven the people. I know they did terrible, but I'm not wiping them out. Yeah, there was some collateral damage, but largely speaking, the Jews survive and God forgives them. And he says, I want you to make a Mishkan. I want you to make a dwelling place, a temporary structure in the desert where I will dwell. And so the day after Yom Kippur, instructions go out on how to build the Mishkan. So that's month number 7. Yom Kippur is in month number 7 from the Exodus, right? Fast forward to month number 9, Kislev. On the 25th day of that month, fait accompli. They're ready. Like, okay, where do we put it? And they're like, oh, Moses says you got to wait. So it only took them 2.5 months to get it all together. And they had to wait now till Tavis, which is month number 10, Shvat, month number 11, Adar, month number 12. At the very end of month number 12 is when they finally start the inauguration process. It was a 7-day process. They had to practice. They had to do the practice run 7 times. Build the Mishkan, take it apart. Build the Mishkan, take it apart. And then finally they inaugurated it. So let's keep reading now. Yet God had wanted to combine this celebration with the month of Isaac's birth, regarding which the verse says, knead, with a K, and make cakes. And the angel promised, I will surely return to you at this time next year. Now Kislev, the month in which the work of the Mishkan was completed, lost out. And God said, I will repay you. How did God repay Kislev? With the Chanukah of the Chashmonaim. So again, the commandment to build the tabernacle was during the month of Tishrei, and they made a charity campaign to get all the materials and donations for the construction, and people were very enthusiastic. And the construction team of Bezalel and Co. You ever heard of that company? Bezalel and Co. That was the name of the construction company that did it. They got to work, and it was already 2.5 months later, but Moses delayed it and said, we're not ready to put it up. And people were wondering, why is that? And the answer was simple. God had decided to postpone the inauguration of the Mishkan until the month of Nisan, because that's when Isaac was born. And we know that because in last week's Torah portion, 2 weeks ago, Vayera, when it says that the angels came to visit Abraham and Sarah and promised them to have a new child, it's their first child together, Yitzchak, it was Passover. It says that when he made cakes, it wasn't chametz cake, it was actually matzah cakes. And later when they came to Lot, it says specifically, Lot made them matzahs, and they ate. So, you can imagine if your name was Kislev, you would be very offended. Be like, well, do I smell bad? Did I not take a shower today? Like the Mishkan is ready, get it set up, right? Why are you waiting? Why are you avoiding me? What did I do wrong? God's like, don't worry, you'll have your turn. Hanukkah's coming, and I'll pay you back then. So here's a talk the Rebbe gave, going a little deeper into the connection between the Mishkan and the month of Nisan. This is from the Shabbos that blesses the month of Kislev in 1972. So every Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh, we bless the coming week, and we bless the new month when it's the Shabbos before a new month. So 1970, well, actually 71. I'm thinking Tafshin Lamed Beis, 5732. But in 1971, the Rebbe gave the following talk. You want to start?
From the standpoint of human effort, the Mishkan could have been erected on the 25th of Kislev, the day when the construction was completed. However, human effort must also awaken a response from above. Spirit draws spirit and brings forth the spirit. That response was only effected on the 1st of Nisan, when the Mishkan was actually set up.
So before you continue, so technically speaking, the Mishkan could have been assembled in Kislev, and even on a spiritual level, the people were ready for that kind of divine revelation. But the initiative from below, them building the Mishkan, had to spark a response from above, And that was only ready to occur in the month of Nisan, and that's why it's all spiritually oriented. That's why the erection of the tabernacle only happened on Nisan. Keep going.
For this, God repaid Kislev with the dedication of the Hasmoneans. This occurred many years later during the Second Temple period when the Greeks were defeated and your children came into the inner sanctuary of your house and purified your temple on the 25th of Kislev. There is an allusion to this date in the word Hanukkah, as this word can be broken down into Han Kaf He,
Chanu Kaf He.
Nu Kaf He. They rested on the 25th.
So Chanu means they rested. Kaf He is the number 25. So the Rebbe continues to say that, note the wording of the Medrash. Now Kislev, the month in which the work of the Mishkan was completed, lost out, or felt ashamed for an alternative version. Since the construction of the Mishkan was completed on the 25th of Kislev, the loss would seem to apply only to that single day. It would not concern the days before it, such as the 24th, when the work was not yet complete, nor the days after, since the work was already done. Why then does the Medrash say that Kislev lost out, rather than that the 25th of Kislev lost out? Like, what does the 15th of Kislev get to, claim victimhood? It's like, dude, you're 10 days before the show. Like, you're irrelevant. But there's a lesson here. This teaches that Hanukkah reflects the theme of the entire month of Kislev. Our sages often express a complete concept in a single word. Here, the wording Kislev lost out indicates that the whole month lost out. Therefore, God repaid Kislev with the dedication of the Hasmoneans, meaning that the defining quality of the month of Kislev, that which distinguishes it from all other months, is expressed through the festival of Hanukkah. For this reason, when we reach the Shabbat on which the month of Kislev is blessed, we should take time to reflect on the lessons that can be learned from the story and meaning of Hanukkah. So already from 4 days ago, from Shabbos last week, when we blessed the coming month, we already need to get into the mode of Hanukkah, because we're entering the month of Hanukkah. We gotta get into that groove. So let's look at source 2. You want to read that?
Sure.
We'll give it to Joe. Give him a chance.
Reading? I can read it.
Okay.
There is a lesson here for us, for we must always emulate God's behavior, as it is stated, just as he is merciful, so shall you be merciful.
So you should learn from God.
A wise choice.
Yeah.
The Midrash tells us that when Kislev lost out, God promised he would repay it, meaning that God is sensitive to a month, that in order not to offend it, he vowed to repay it. This teaches us how careful we need to be with the dignity of others, even when they do not demand it, like Kislev, or when there's room to believe they wouldn't be offended or don't care. God cared even about the dignity of a concept like a month. Because the Torah tells us the story, it means that we must learn a lesson from it for how we treat others, acting with love for our fellow Jews and certainly not hurting them. When a Jew expects help or respect from us, we must try and fill that need as soon as possible.
Right. So if a month is expecting certain dignity, how much more so people? Another example of this is in the Beis Hamikdash. There were steps all over. You have to realize the Beis Hamikdash was built on a mountain, so it's not all on one level, but there's actually different levels. And as you go in, you go up a few stairs here, and 15 stairs from the women's courtyard to the Israelite courtyard, and then you go up more stairs to go into the Holy and the Holy of Holies. There are steps everywhere, but there was one part of the Beis Hamikdash that specifically didn't have steps. And what is that? The Mizbeach, the altar. What's the reason why the altar didn't have steps?
Wasn't it so that the Kohanim won't expose their underparts or something like
That's
that?
exactly correct. It's so that the
Oh,
Kohanim, the priests who are working in the temple, shouldn't, because they wore loose fitting clothing, they didn't have the kind of undergarments we wear today. So if they were to go up steps, then they're taking wide uh, steps and gaps between their legs, and it can expose their private parts to the stairs beneath them. And since the ramp or this of the altar is a part of the holiness of the altar, we don't want to disgrace the ramp or what would have been the stairs by exposing ourselves to the stairs. And so therefore there's a ramp which creates more of a flat and seamless walk that doesn't expose anything that's undignified. So we see even an inanimate object, such as a ramp, or even a concept, such as a month, we're worried about its feelings. You know, there's a lot of people, and when it comes to politics, they say, "Oh, why are we getting so caught up in feelings? Feelings don't matter." That's not true. Feelings matter very much. So let's see what the Rebbe says here about dedicating a house on page 4. Joe, you want to read that?
yeah, yeah. Dedicating house, the Rebbe. Hanukkah contains many concepts and lessons. But first and foremost, we should focus on the central theme of Hanukkah, which is quite simply the concept of dedication, a translation of the word Hanukkah.
Right, because it comes from the word chinuch, which means um, to dedicate or inaugurate something new.
Dedication applies only to something new, not to something which has already existed for some time. For example, the dedication of the Mishkan on the 1st of Nisan, which marked a new stage, the full-fledged establishment of the Mishkan. During the 7 days of preparation that preceded it, Moses would set up the Mishkan and take it down each day. But on that day, the 1st of Nisan, he set it up and did not take it down again. The same applies to the dedication of the temple. Both the first and second temples, each dedication marked the beginning of something new, the building of the temple itself. Likewise, with regard to the dedication of the Hasmoneans. After they purified the temple from its defilement, they rededicated the altar in a new way, being to praise and thanks to your great name.
Which is a quote from the prayers we add on Hanukkah. The same applies.
The same applies to the dedication of a private home in our own time. When a person moves to a new home, it is customary to hold a Chanukah Habai, a dedication ceremony. This is an ancient custom already mentioned by the early authorities and even more so by later ones, as cited by the Khatam Sofer. The Alter Rebbe himself composed a discourse beginning with the verse of Psalm, a song for the dedication of the house of David, and is related in Avodat Halevi by Rabbi Aharon of
Strashelia.
Strashelia. Yeah, I would have pronounced it. That the Alter Rebbe delivered that discourse at a Hanukkah Hawaii.
Okay. So the idea of dedicating a new home is a big concept in Judaism. Um, you know, just this Sunday evening. So as you know, I spent the weekend in New York. Got there Wednesday night. Thank you for helping me get there. And I got back Monday morning. But so Wednesday night through Saturday night, I slept in New York. But because the convention's banquet was in Edison, New Jersey on Sunday, and I have a brother who lives in New Jersey, and it turns out that just a couple of weeks ago, fortunately, he bought a new home and he moved in. So I was like, I want to check out your house. Can I stay by you Monday night? And I made my ticket out of Newark Airport on Monday morning. And it just so happens to be that because my other brothers were also there at the convention, so they joined us as well. And then my brother from Pomona, just 45 minutes away, he drove in. So the five of us got together and we had a Chanukah Sabayis. We dedicated his home. We had l'chaim together. We had some good quality time. We had quality time amongst 6,000 other rabbis, but we also had our own special quality time with each other. Did a little music jam, We had a good time. Anyhow, so that's Chanukah Sabayis, and gave him our wishes and blessings for a new house. Personally, I said that I give him a blessing that he should be able to fill every square inch of the home, kind of like we talked about Monday, that nothing should go to waste, right?
How
So
many kids does he have?
6, Kanai Nahara.
Oh,
So yeah.
It'll be full.
Well, thank God he has room to fill it with. So, yeah. Anyways, let's look at source 3. This is from the Khatam Sofer, which is he was a rabbi actually in Bratislava, Slovakia. Then it was called Pressburg, Slovakia, and I have a brother who lives in Slovakia
I was there.
on the other side of the country. You were in Bratislava? Nice. Have you been in Košice, Slovakia?
Mhm.
No. Okay. Well, my brother lives in Košice, which is the opposite side of the country. It's right near the border of Ukraine. Yeah. So, anyways, this is from the Khatam Sofer. He says, "Shalom, my friend, the esteemed Rabbi Yoel," because this is in response to a question he received. Regarding what is written in the Bayer Hetev, which is a commentary on Yoredeya 179, quoting Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, that there's a danger in building stone structures and homes in a place where there never was one before, and the folk advice is to bring a rooster and hen to the home and slaughter them. You question whether this is an ancient idolatrous practice. It's very important to realize something. There's a fine line between superstition and idolatry, because there are things we do that have a source in Judaism, and there's certain precautions, even if it might be Kabbalistic and things that we don't quite understand. Some things have foundations in Judaism, and other things are just superstitions that are just baloney, and other things that are actually rooted in idolatry. And so that's a very important distinction to be made. So Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid wrote a will, saying in his will he writes that there are certain things we shouldn't do due to some sort of spiritual harm that could happen.
This is in his will.
Yes.
Okay.
And he writes this, to his children and grandchildren, really kind of to the Jewish community. We don't follow everything in there, but there are things like you're not supposed to return to your home once you set out on a trip. Like if you forgot something, you're not allowed to go back into your house. You have to have somebody else go in and retrieve it, not you yourself as you left the trip. It can cause harm. Anyway, so in that will, he warns of a danger in building a structure from stones, as well as building a house on land where nothing has ever been built before. And he says that this is of concern that it could bring about the death of someone in the family, God forbid. He then continued that there's a common saying amongst the public that one should place a pair of chickens in the house for some time and then slaughter them there. And by doing so, the worry that somebody might die in that house is removed. It's almost like we do by kaparot, where our potential death is now transferred to the chicken, and all is well.
Unless you're the chicken.
Exactly. Well, it depends. If you're going to eat that chicken and use the energy to serve God, then that was the purpose of the chicken. Remember, we talked about that on Monday. So Rabbi Yoel asked the Khatam Sofer whether this seems to him to be anything Jewish, because to him it smells not Jewish. So in my view, those who follow Rabbi Yehuda Chassid's opinion believe that the chickens are dying in exchange for the residents of the home, similar to the practice of kaparot. So, however, it is best not to be concerned with these fears, as they are not recorded in the Talmud and later authorities, and Rabbi Yehuda Chassid's will may not be an accurate record. So in other words, this is not a slight on Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, who was a very holy man, but it could be the record of his will is not quite accurate. It hasn't been verified. So it could be he wrote things and then people kind of said, "Oh, why don't we just throw in all these other superstitions and attribute it to the same will as well?" So, and then the Khatam Sofer offers his own approach. He says it would be best practice to dedicate the home with Torah and prayer, for Torah is our life and the length of our days. May it be in peace. He's like, instead of doing these funny business with chickens, why don't you pray? Why don't you study Torah in the home? And if you're worried about people dying, well, that's a perfect remedy for that, because we know that Torah and prayer is what keeps us alive. So problem solved, right? It's fantastic. Okay, so from this, the Rebbe learns that every home is a holy temple. Joe, you want to read this on page 6?
Yeah. The Rebbe, every home is a holy temple. At first glance, it seems puzzling the verse, a psalm, a song for the dedication of the house of David, refers to the dedication of the holy temple. What connection does that have to the building of an ordinary synagogue, and even more so to a private home?
Especially, so the context, remember we said before this whole thing with the chicken business, is that the Alter Rebbe recited a discourse beginning with this verse at the inauguration of a private home. I believe his own personal home. So why are you quoting a verse associated with the temple in your own home? Keep going.
As we have discussed at length in the past, the purpose and goal of every synagogue, a quote, miniature sanctuary, unquote, and indeed of every Jewish home, is to be like the Holy Temple, a place where God's presence dwells. This idea is already expressed regarding the Mishkan in the verse. They shall make me a sanctuary and I will dwell among them. Not within it, but among them, meaning that with each and every individual. In other words, the divine dwelling, the very idea signified by the word Mishkan, must exist within every person. Each person's home should be a place where God's presence rests, just as it did in the Mishkan and the Holy of Holies where the Ark and its cover stood.
Okay. So you have to dedicate a space in your home that should be the home should be a place where God can dwell. Let's continue. Peter?
Dedication with joy. A further point regarding dedication. The inauguration of something new is done with much ceremony and with joy. At the dedication of the tabernacle, many offerings are brought, far more than in the regular daily service. There was even a unique practice not found elsewhere, the offering of incense by an individual, something permitted only then as a special one-time directive.
Okay, so in the book of Bamidbar, it talks about the offerings that were brought each day from right after the inauguration. Again, we talked about month number this, number that. Month number 12, the last 7 days, they did a practice run. And then on the first day of month number 13, the second Nisan, counting from the Exodus, on day 1, the Mishkan was inaugurated, and for the following 12 days, each of the leaders of every tribe brought a series of sacrifices. As it says in source 4, God said to Moses, one chieftain of a tribe each day shall present his offering for the dedication of the altar. The one who brought his offering on the first day was Nachshon, son of Aminadav of the tribe of Judah. His offering was one silver bowl weighing 130 shekels, and one silver basin weighing 70 shekels. According to the sacred shekel, both filled with fine flour mixed with olive oil for a meal offering. One gold spoon weighing 10 shekels filled with incense. It's like, wait a second. Who brought the incense? So Rashi says, filled with incense. We do not find incense being offered by individuals on the outer altar, except here. This was a one-time command. Now, normally incense is brought on the inner altar. There were 2 altars. There was one big, massive altar with a ramp, and then there was a smaller altar, Yihai, that was the incense altar, and that was further in the holy, next to the menorah and the showbread table, the shulchan. So normally the incense was on that miniature altar. But in this case, the incense was brought not by a Kohen, but by other individuals, the leaders of each tribe, on the outer altar. And then the Torah continues, one young bull, one ram, and 1 year old lamb, 1 year old lamb for a burnt offering, one young male goat for a sin offering, and for the peace offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 male goats, and 5 year old lambs. This was the offering of Nachshon, son of Aminadav. Now, then the Torah goes on to list all other 11 tribes, going word by word, repeating the exact same offering. Now, says the Rebbe, dedication of the first temple. The dedication of the first temple in the days of Solomon was also marked by numerous service and offerings as described at length in the Bible, in the book of Kings, and it was accompanied by great joy, feasting, and celebration. Here you have source 5. Joe, you want to read that?
Yeah, Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes, the princes of the fathers' houses of the children of Israel, to King Solomon in Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of God from the city of David, which is Zion. All the men of Israel assembled before King Solomon at the festival in the month of Etanim,
Yeah,
the seventh. Etanim?
Etanim.
Etanim.
That's Etan means strength. That's the month of Tishrei, I believe.
All right, the seventh month, yeah. All the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. They brought up the ark of God, the tent of meeting, and all the sacred vessels that were in the tent. The priests and the Levites carried them. King Solomon and the entire congregation of Israel, who were assembled with him before the ark, were sacrificing sheep and oxen in such great numbers that it could not be counted. And Solomon slaughtered the peace offerings that he brought to God, 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep. With this, the king and all the children of Israel inaugurated the temple of God.
Okay.
Now Solomon observed the feast of that time, and all Israel with him, a vast assembly from the entrance of Hamath to the brook of each before God, for 7 days and 7 days, 14 days in total.
Okay, so long story short, it was quite a festivity. It was quite a party that he threw over there. And no surprise, because we're talking about King Solomon, who's quite the legend and quite the wealthy king. So the Rebbe says like this: there was even something unprecedented at the dedication of the first temple. That year, the people of Israel did not observe Yom Kippur in the usual way. Huh? Because during the 7 days before Sukkot, they celebrated each day with joy and feasting. A heavenly voice proclaimed, "All of you are destined for eternal life." Interesting.
Yeah.
There wasn't they weren't rebuked and punished for violating Yom Kippur, but they're like, you did good. In other words, although Yom Kippur is a day of complete rest, entirely transcending the physical world, with no place for eating or drinking, nevertheless, in that year, not only was the prohibition on eating and drinking set aside, but these very acts became part of the temple's dedication. Now, I want to clarify something very important, and that is, the Torah and its rules do not change. They don't evolve. They don't get modified to fit the times. The Torah is everlasting because truth is everlasting. However, the Torah does tell us that a prophet who has already previously proven him or herself as a prophet, and I'm not going to get into what those qualifications are, but when a verified prophet comes along and tells you that a certain commandment is no longer relevant, don't follow him, even though he's a verified prophet, because the Torah doesn't change. And even if a prophet tells you otherwise, the Torah doesn't change. However, if a prophet comes along and tells you that, again, a verified prophet comes along and tells you that for a specific reason or cause, a certain mitzvah needs to be suspended or a certain sin must be violated because of a particular scenario, which is temporary, if that prophet has been previously verified to be legit, then you do follow him. So if a prophet comes along and says, due to the dedication of the temple, this year Yom Kippur is suspended, there is room in Jewish law for such a suspension. Obviously, no Tom, Dick, and Harry can come along and make the same calculations in their own lives and just say, I find this important or that important, because then nothing's important. But at the same time, if somebody would ever come along and say that a certain commandment is no longer relevant, you know that that's a phony. Like if somebody comes along and says that Shabbos is now observed on Sunday, that's a phony. It's always been on Saturday. We don't change it.
How do they verify it?
It's a whole nother discussion. In Deuteronomy chapter 13, 14, the Torah tells us some details on that.
Okay.
But so what do we see here? That there was something very shocking that happened at the dedication of the first temple. But let's look now at the dedication of the second temple. Peter?
The same was true with the dedication of the second temple in the days of Cyrus. It too was marked with various services and great celebration.
You can read the source from the book of Ezra. Yeah.
Ezra. The builders laid the foundation of the temple of God, and they stationed the priests in their attire with trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals, to praise God through David, king of Israel. They sang aloud with praise and thanksgiving to God, for he is good, and his kindness endures forever over Israel. The entire people shouted with a great shout of praise to God, because the foundation of the house of God was laid. Many of the priests, Levites, and heads of families, elderly men who had seen the first temple standing in its place, were weeping loudly as they saw this temple with their own eyes, while many others shouted for joy. The people could not distinguish the sound of the joyful shout from the sound of the people weeping, for the people shouted loudly, and the sound was heard from afar.
Okay. Very, very mysterious. So let's see the Rebbe's comments on this. The dedication of the temple after the Hashmonai victory. The same is found regarding the dedication of the Hasmoneans. This dedication led to something new. These lights shall never be extinguished, referring to the Hanukkah lights. As Nachmanides explains at the beginning of this section, Bahalotcha, it is well known that when the temple no longer stands and the sacrifices have ceased because of its destruction, the lamps too are no longer kindled, meaning the lamps in the temple. But the verse alludes to the lights of the Hasmonean dedication, which remain in practice even after the destruction throughout our exile. So in other words, when the Torah tells us to kindle, that Aaron HaKohen kindles, the high priest kindles the lamps in the temple or the tabernacle, that's only while the temple or the tabernacle is standing. However, the Hanukkah candles, those continue even afterwards. This was something that had never occurred before, not in the time of the tabernacle, nor in the first or second temples. When those were destroyed, their lights were extinguished as well. Only the lights kindled in remembrance of the miracle of Hanukkah continue forever. Here's a quote from Josephus. Judah, son of Mattathias. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Yehuda ben Mattisyahu, the high priest, and all the faithful assembly who were with him came to Jerusalem. They tore down all the altars that the Gentiles had built, purified the house from the idols of the Gentiles, built a new altar, brought offerings on it, and arranged the wood. They could not find holy fire, so they cried out to God and called upon him. Fire came forth from the stones of the altar. They arranged the wood on it and offered their sacrifice. The fire remained on the altar until the third division of the priests completed their service. They completed the dedication of the altar on the 25th of Kislev, placed the showbread on the table of God, lit the lamps of the menorah, and praised God with the recitation of Hallel for 8 days.
Why does it say Cheshvan?
I think that's a typo. Does it say Cheshvan over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a typo.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Because it says in the Hebrew, Him Chagagu es Chanukas HaMizbeach B'Chodesh Kislev. They celebrated the
Yeah.
dedication Kislev by Yom HaEsrim HaChamisha by on the 25th day thereof. So I don't know why it says Cheshvan. It's just a typo, presumably. Okay. So what does the Rebbe say? Let's try to wrap this up. The same pattern can be seen in the dedication of a house in our own time. The celebration is marked by feasting, not just the usual amount when guests are welcome, but with greater joy and abundance than usual. I guess my brother's Hanukkah Sabayis doesn't qualify. 5 people, that's not enough. You got to have 150 people there. Really run the place over. That's a true dedication. But here's what the Rebbe says. All of this is related in the Torah not merely to inform us about what happened in the past, but as a lesson to teach us how to live today. Not just when you buy a new home, but every day. We should know that when the month of Kislev arrives, this central theme of which is Hanukkah, and of course Yutes Kislev, the Hasidic Rosh Hashanah, we'll get there, but it's a time to dedicate ourselves anew, to rebuild and renew every aspect of our divine service in the study of Torah and the observance of mitzvos. The purpose of all this is to fulfill the divine desire that God desired to have a dwelling place in the lower world, meaning that the world itself should become a home for God. This is the true Chanukah Bayit, to bring about renewal in all areas of divine service with fresh vitality, as if beginning something entirely new. This is also the deeper meaning of the concept that each day the words of Torah should be considered new in your eyes. Just as the giving of the Torah was accompanied by awe and reverence, so too we must approach Torah and mitzvahs today in the same spirit. Since this principle is stated in the Torah of truth, it must be expressed genuinely, not as an act, but with true sincerity. Our study of Torah and observance of mitzvahs each day should feel completely new, as though we had never before heard of the giving of the Torah and never studied or observed it before. Now, how can we reach such a state? Well, for some of us, it's by never studying. But for those of us who have studied before, how do we reach a state of renewed energy and excitement? Says the Rebbe, we are granted special power for this in the month of Kislev, whose primary theme is Chanukah, dedication from new. The message and mission of this month are to bring renewal into our spiritual life. And therefore, during this time, it becomes much easier to experience Torah and mitzvos on a new level. And here's a letter from the Rebbe, from Igros Kodesh, volume 19, talking about some customs of how to dedicate a new home. One is to have Jewish books. Our custom is to first bring into the home a Siddur, Chumash, Tehillim, and Tanya, in addition to the universal custom of bringing in bread and salt. That's brought in earlier sources. That first thing you bring into your new home is bread and salt. And then the Rebbe says, of course, mezuzahs. Our custom is to immediately affix the mezuzahs without a blessing and remove one for checking on the 30th day, or replace it with a nicer one, and then reaffix it with a blessing to include the rest of the mezuzahs. So even though you're not technically obligated outside of Israel to consider a home permanent, because we don't live permanently outside Israel. So up until 30 days, living outside Israel is always considered temporary. So that's why we don't make a bracha until the 30th day. However, the Rebbe says there's nothing wrong with putting up the mezuzahs from day one and then just having them checked and put back on, and that's when you make the bracha on day 30. Here in another letter, the Rebbe writes in source 9, you write about moving into a new home. Certainly you had the mezuzos checked to ensure they are kosher. And then in another talk, the Rebbe says in source 10, every Jewish home should have a charity box that reminds us of the mitzvah and encourages regular giving. By the way, the Rebbe even points out that the charity box should be nailed into the wall of the home so that the actual fabric of the home itself is a home of a mitzvah. So when it's nailed in, the whole home, by extension, is one big charity box, is one big mitzvah. And of course, source 11, Hasidic gathering. Here's a letter from the Rebbe where he says, I received your letter about moving into a new home. It would be proper to host a Hasidic gathering in your home where words of Torah and words of arousing the fear and love of God are spoken. This is a fitting dedication for a Jewish home. So, takeaway is that the days of Kislev, especially the days of Hanukkah, are days filled with spiritual blessing, and it's a special time to have Chanukah, to have dedication, which is a renewal of our service to God. And that means that we have a special power from above to do every mitzvah that we do with new enthusiasm, whether it's tefillin that we put on regularly, or kosher that we eat regularly, or any other mitzvah that we're doing. Lighting Hanukkah candles, of course, but even now the Shabbos candles should be lit with renewed energy, as if this is the first time experiencing this wonderful opportunity, and we should make the most of it in every mitzvah that we